Kingpin is right. When the flawed system has betrayed you, how far are you willing to go for your own ideals? The story of Wilson Fisk and Matt Murdock, rather than the typical confrontation between a hero and a villain, is a clash of ideologies between two people who believe they are right in a chaotic world where vigilantes have become, perhaps, the #1 threat to safety. Wilson Fisk proposes himself as the Messiah of New York. But what if behind this Messiah hides a tyrant, a dictator who only wants to increase his power for the benefit of his network of criminals? What if the real enemies of humanity are those vigilantes who try to protect it? In this video, we'll be analyzing the new Daredevil series and explaining why Wilson Fisk is right. And for more videos of your favorite series and movies, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Welcome to the Oasis Geek. From his first appearance in Daredevil, Wilson Fisk is introduced as a shadow, a name mentioned with fear, a myth before a man. In the first season, we first see him contemplating a white painting in his minimalist apartment. No guns, no screams, no direct threats. Just a man staring into the void. What does Fisk see in that painting? For him, that blank canvas is the world in its pure state, before the chaos, before the corruption. It is the city he wants to build, one that belongs to him completely, something that has been repeated throughout his story, and is the reason why in the new season, we see how this character is trying to destroy the city. For Wilson Fisk, that blank slate is the city after it is destroyed, and that blank canvas will be his new world for the ones he loves. This is where Fisk differs from other MCU villains. He doesn't want to conquer galaxies like Thanos or rule Asgard like Loki. His ambition is more real, something we see day in and day out, and for that very reason more terrifying. He wants Hell's Kitchen. He wants New York. He wants order for his family. But to what extent does the need for order justify brutality? Is a ruthless king preferable or absolute chaos? To understand Wilson's motivations, we must know what has happened to this character the last few years. He is a man who has built his power on violence, manipulation, and strategy. For years, he operated in the shadows of New York, using his businessman facade to control organized crime. His great ambition was to transform Hell's Kitchen, but his plan fell apart when his illicit activities reached the FBI, which led him to jail. However, Fisk never stopped pulling the strings. You have to give him credit, as he is a person who has stuck to his activities despite being in the public eye, which also makes him a strategist of evil. From prison, he took control of the system by forming a network of loyalties that allowed him not only to direct crime from the inside, but also to ensure that when he got out, he would have an empire waiting for him. His release was not a simple matter of luck. He manipulated the FBI, used Benjamin Poindexter to tarnish Daredevil's image, and managed to clear his name before the law. But his obsession with Murdock blinded him, and in the end, he was betrayed by his own circle. Defeated, he ended up in prison again. He survived the snap, and when he regained his freedom, he allied with the tracksuit mafia and other criminal groups to regain his position. During this time, Fisk took Maya Lopez, daughter of one of his former hitmen, under his wing and trained her to become one of his most lethal weapons. But when she discovered the truth about her father's death, she turned against him. Fisk tried to kill her, but ended up getting shot in the head. Miraculously, he survived. 5 months later, now recovered, he set out on a hunt to regain control over Maya. He tried to convince her to work together again. But when she refused, he kidnapped her family and forced her to confront him at the Choctaw Nation powwow. During the fight, Maya used her abilities to make Fisk relive his traumatic childhood, leaving him in a state of vulnerability that forced him to flee. It is at this point in the story that Fisk realizes that he will not achieve real change in the world by mentoring someone or by manipulating individually. If he wants to change anything, he will have to take real power, and the power is not in crime but in politics. Seeing the chaos in the city and the opportunity to assert his control in a more legitimate way, he decided that the next step in his story would not be from the shadows, but from the mayor's office. For Fisk, his actions are justified because the world is suffering violence because of criminals and vigilantes. Wilson doesn't see himself as a criminal. He sees himself as someone who seeks order in chaos and is unwilling to be weak. Ironically, it is the desire to rebuild New York and gain power that is slowly driving Matt to reclaim his identity as a vigilante. It's one of those cases where the villain causes the hero to return. For his part, Matt has lost all hope in the justice system. Since the death of his friend, and seeing how the city has turned a criminal into mayor, he has begun to question why he has made so many sacrifices for the city. Matt's ideals are born out of a religious upbringing and a sense of justice accompanied by his work as a lawyer. Ironically, he has crossed the line several times because he understands that justice has been insufficient. And it is before this clash of ideologies that we find ourselves in this new season of Daredevil. On the one hand, a former criminal mayor who is willing to do anything to accumulate power and who sees himself as a messiah. And on the other, a retired vigilante who is being forced to return from the shadows because he is seeing how his city is becoming something he would never have wished for. More than a superhero story, this Daredevil series has more political overtones and relevance to the present day. And perhaps that is Marvel's intention, to move away from the typical superhero stories and show us a more human perspective. Something gray. People who can empathize with Matt's thoughts and his frustration against a system that does not defend the innocent, and even empathize with Wilson Fisk, a man who tries to change to save the people he loves. However, seeing Wilson Fisk's actions, one question remains: is he right? The Avengers have caused more harm than help in the world. It was the rise of Tony Stark that set off a chain effect, which has caused the near extinction of mankind several times over. It would seem that Daredevil's idea of justice, a vigilante justice, really isn't enough to cover all the crises that the Avengers and other entities have caused in the world. Since the destruction of Sokovia and the multiple crimes of the Avengers, it is obvious that the Avengers have not been a force for good in the world. And this is the position Matt Murdock finds himself in, at a point in his career where he doesn't know if the mayor of New York will be the savior he promises to be and manage to redeem himself, something he, as a character, believes, or if he is really manipulating everyone to increase his power. Matt already warned Kingpin that if he returns to corruption, the blind vigilante would be back, and I think it's only a matter of time before these two clash again. But looking back on all the events that have happened in New York, from Loki's attack with the Chitauri, the multiple fights of the Hulk and Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Daredevil's fights, leads us to believe that the safety of the city is constantly being put at risk by the vigilantes. As long as Wakanda was isolated from the world, it kept its peace. It wasn't until it opened relations with the rest of the world that its problems began. And this is the reason why currently Matt Murdock, when looking in the mirror, asks himself, is Wilson Fisk right? Would the world be better off without superheroes and vigilantes? But tell me, what do you think about all this? Is it that Wilson Fisk is right, and the only way to rule New York today is with tyranny and violence? Is it that all vigilantes and superheroes should be suppressed to maintain order in society? What do you think? And for more videos of your favorite series and movies, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You are on The Oasis Geek.